Hello, welcome to my little trip down road testing memory lane. Another Q&A video for you. Thanks very much for sending in all these questions and comments. I really appreciate them. I've got a huge stash and I'm saving them all. So if I haven't got around to your question, I definitely will. So why not crack on with the first one today? So here we go. First one is from Laz1Go286. Hi Michael, I have a rather delicate question. Why do I see very different riding styles of journos at MCN, including you, if I compare the mid-noughties sports bike group test on the road and looking at a 2018 onwards sports bikes test on the road? I mean, before with Chad and all the other guys, it was all about wheelies, stoppies, knee down at photo shoots. And it was also free and cool and honest. There was even a wheelie school back in the day. Whereas now it's no wheelies, no speeding, no knee down on public road, nothing. Just well-behaved riders sitting in the middle of the sports bikes in a touring position and taking corners like a tourist. No offence, I'm just curious why everything got so PC these days and why road testing has lost its edge. Or is it just for the content we see on the screen, but offset when the camera stops recording, the journalists still ride hard and put the bikes to the test properly? Sorry, didn't mean to be personal. I just see a big difference here and I'd like to hear your opinion. Well, yeah, I mean, if you go to the extreme of the kind of late 80s, early 90s and all the way through the 90s, magazines are full of nothing but wheelies and skids and stoppies and all the rest of it. And it is true that, everyone has to be a bit more PC nowadays. If we were to muck about on bikes, which we definitely don't, we wouldn't do it in front of the camera. Even to the point that when we go on launches now, if you ever do a skid or a wheelie or anything that's kind of outside what's perceived as acceptable, the manufacturers don't even give you those pictures. So it is sad. It's kind of taken a little bit of the joy out of road testing. Photo shoots aren't as fun as they used to be. It's not worth mucking about for the camera anymore because those pictures just won't be used. So, the pictures we take now are more kind of arty, more aspirational, but not sporty. That said, we're still allowed to get our rocks off if we are off the public highway. So if we've got a private road, sometimes at launches, they actually close sections of roads down for us with the police at each end. And we can kind of run free. When we go to sort of airfields and stuff, sometimes where we test, we can run free. And the same with the track. If we've got the track to ourselves, obviously within a track day scenario, you're not allowed to muck about either. The other thing is it's not as boisterous as it used to be on road tests. We were all a lot younger and the bikes kind of matched our enthusiasm for messing about. I spent most of my early MCN life wearing leathers. And we'd always be on sports bikes. We'd always be pulling big wheelies. And that just doesn't happen anymore. There's very few sports bikes. There's very few bikes that kind of urge you on in the same way. And the other big thing is the proliferation of electronics. If you're on a ride now, on a lot of bikes with ABS, you can't skid about anymore. Sometimes you can turn ABS off. Some bikes, the ABS will turn off if you wheelie for long enough, strangely. Some bikes you can turn the rear ABS off so you can still do skids. Ducati Panigales spring to mind. And then anti-wheelie won't let you wheelie properly either. And you would never want to lean on anti-wheelie to do a wheelie because one of the tricks to doing a wheelie is having enough revs left over to be able to accelerate on the way down. If you bump up against anti-wheelie, it will just bring the front end straight down and can cause a problem, especially if the bars aren't straight. So sometimes you've got to choose whether you can turn electronics off on some bikes, but say if you're on an hour or so ride at a launch or on a road test, you've got to decide whether you want safety or kind of frivolity. So that's it really. We still have fun, but in a different way. But yeah, those days of skids and wheelies, unfortunately, are gone now. And even, sometimes when you see that, maybe in some foreign magazines that really kind of still go hard at that kind of thing, doesn't really look. It's not a cool look anymore to muck about on the road. Yeah, it's much better to kind of the riding style now. All the journos are doing this big Marquez thing, aren't they? But yeah, I don't know. It is definitely more boring seeing a bike just going around a corner. I think there needs to be a sort of a new paradigm of how to make a bike look good in a picture rather than it just going around a corner at half lean. Yeah, maybe you got some ideas of how to make bikes look good in pictures. But thanks very much for your question. Moving on. This one's from John Doe 5532. Hello, mate. Thanks for your question. Hello, Michael. I have a question for you. I would like to ask if you have ever used adjustable offset triple clamps on track bikes and what difference it made to the feel of how quickly or how tight the bike can turn into corners if you increase the offset a few millimetres from the standard setup. My R1M drives me crazy with the understeer, so I'm going to fit the triple clamps and hope it doesn't upset the stability too much. Well, interesting question that. So offset triple clamps. So triple clamps, we would call them yokes in the UK. And adjustable yokes allow you to push the whole steering, kind of not the steering stem, but the forks, the whole front of the end, the whole of the front end, back or forward. I've got there. It doesn't change the steering angle, but it changes the how far forward or back you can pull the forks, and they sort of stay at the same angle. I would say that I've never tried. I've ridden bikes with adjustable steering, adjustable yokes, but never adjusted them. They've always been in a fixed position for the entirety of my ride. When I've ridden some race bikes, they're all adjustable. But I would say that is the very last thing you should try and do to cure understeer on an R1M. There's a load of other things you can do before then. And when you get down the route of adjustable triple clamps and swing arm pivots, you're really going down a rabbit hole of trying to understand what's going on. There's enough to worry about with ride heights, with spring rates, with damping rates, tyre pressures. There's so many things that can affect the handling of the bike. I would try and find another solution to your understeer. So you don't say where the understeer is. So I guess 2 times your bike would understeer would be on the way into the corners, off the throttle, on the brakes, and it's kind of going wide. Or there's the kind of understeer where you're tapping the throttle and the bike kind of just drifts out to the edge of the track more than you want. You want it to stay in. I mean, how long is a piece of string to try and sort that out? That is the question, isn't it? I mean, if my bike was understeering on the way into a corner, generally, one of 2 extreme things can happen. When I first started racing an S1000RR, before then, the common way to make a bike steer faster was to put it on his nose. If you do that with an S1000RR that's already got quite extreme steering geometry, you're too over the front and the bike kind of scrubs and understeers. So you've actually got to take weight off the front and raise the front. So it could be a ride height thing with your R1. The forks might be poking through the yokes too much. You might want to flatten the forks on the yokes and raise the front end to stop it understeering. That would be one solution. The other thing, if it's understeering on the throttle, you can increase the rebound damping on the forks so the front end doesn't pop up so fast when you let go of the brakes and go wide. You can also put some support on the rear end when you get on the throttle so the bike doesn't sit down as much and go wide. I mean, really, you want to, rock up at a track with somebody who knows what they're doing with suspension. I mean, I don't know where you are. If you're in the UK, at some track days, there's suspension cover. I think 100% suspension, really good place to go to. Or, you know, try and speak to some people that club race or race an R1M and see what they do to make their bikes handle. But the R1M is a very, very good handling bike. I've ridden some really nicely set up ones just with what's there as standard, and haven't really had a problem with understeer. But yeah, let me know you get on. But I'd avoid going down that whole adjustable triple clamp route. But great question. Thank you very much. This one is from PJack 7000. Thanks very much for your question. Love these videos. Thanks very much. I do have a question or two. How do you connect / stay in touch with the average rider? With your level of experience in both racing and road riding, I imagine there's a real risk of being disconnected from the vast majority of riders. Is this something you consider as a road tester? Well, yeah, that's a really good question, and it's quite often said to me that, you know, even by people within MCM, that because I've been riding for so long and what I do, I can't relate to the average rider. But I don't agree with that, because one of the great things about motorbikes, it's a level playing field for everyone. Once all the hype and the bluster's gone of whatever you do for a living or whatever, you know, status you are or whatever, when you get on a motorbike, it's just you and the bike. And that's the great thing about it. The way the bike talks to you, the way you react to it, the way the bike makes you feel, you know, it can make you feel scared, it can make you feel elated. It's just an incredible thing riding a motorbike, which is why once you're hooked, it's even me who rides every single day, I can't get enough of it. I mean, I've just come back from a 2-week riding holiday with my girlfriend, and we did 4,500 miles in 2 weeks. When, you know, you would think that riding every day, the last thing I'd want to do is get on a bike, and I absolutely do. So, you know, I feel the same experiences as that average rider. Also, I've got the benefit of speaking to a lot of people, whether that's on motorcycle launches where I speak to other journalists and you get a feel for what's going on in the world, speak to racers where you kind of get an idea of you know, what they're doing at a top level and how they're riding. I speak to a lot of MCM readers, respond to a lot of MCM readers, looking at your questions here and responding to those, working at the Ron Haslam Race School for 8 years and seeing how people react to bikes and their kind of fears and what they're good at and what they're not. And I think I'm quite lucky that I've got a foot in both camps. So obviously I ride a lot, and by default you become experienced and you get to a pretty good level. And I've raced not at a high level, but just at kind of club level. So I kind of know what that side of riding is like, but also I'm as nervous and scared as anybody sometimes on a motorbike. You know, I can go down a wet, horrible piece of road and be absolutely papping myself just like anybody else. You know, and sometimes I think I get these flashes every now and then, and I'm sitting on a motorbike thinking, I don't even really understand how this works or why it's going around a corner or any of that kind of stuff. Or I don't know if you ever get it. I kind of get on a bike and think I should be putting a seatbelt on. You know, I have all these weird thoughts just like everyone else. So I think that's how I kind of stay in touch with the average rider. Yeah, I get to ride beautiful race bikes and exotic road bikes and everything in between, but I still feel like a normal rider. I just feel like a normal person that got lucky enough to be able to do this incredible job. And that kind of filters into road testing. You know, when I'm testing any particular bike, you think about who that bike's going to be for. So, you know, if you're riding a Harley, you're not going to talk about what it's like on the edge of grip. You're going to talk about the sensations and how it makes you feel. If you're riding a Pan-European, well, that's an old reference, isn't it? You talk about, you know, its comfort and long distance ability and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I still consider myself as an average rider. So hopefully that helps when I'm road testing. But that's a really good question. Thanks very much. Next is from Spooky 1969. Great handle. Thanks for your question. Regarding tyres for track riding, at what point can you move to slicks? I'd love to try them, probably the Pirelli slicks, and I'm currently using Supercorsa SC3. Presumably the tread makes them easier to get up to temperature and maintain it. Many say you won't benefit or keep temperature in them until you're in the fast group. But then I read something by Simon Crafos saying they always use slicks for students as it gave them confidence to know the grip was there, and they just choose the compound based on the rider. Thoughts? Yeah, very good question. I mean, if you're just talking in a track day scenario, tyre technology now has moved on so much that you don't need slicks to get the most out of a fast bike. Say if you've got an S1000RR, for example. If you were to get talking of Pirelli, say Pirelli do sports touring tyres, sports tyres, and then there's something between sports tyres and track day tyres, which is a Pirelli Diablo Rosso Corsa 4. That's it. They actually launched that at Mugello, and we rode around Mugello all day on superbikes, and you couldn't really ask for any more grip. Then you've got another step above. You've got road compound track day tyres like Supercorsas, which are fantastic. So really you don't need any more than that. Yes, slicks give you the ultimate in grip, but what I would say is, in a track day scenario, slicks need a lot of managing. So although, if you're in Spain and you're going to go along to a track where it's consistently the same temperature all the time, that might be the answer. But even in southern Spain, if you do these winter track days in Almeria or Cartagena, in the morning the track is really cold and in the afternoon it's really hot. And the thing with slicks is they work in a really narrow temperature window. So if you've chosen, and the compound's not so much based on riding ability, it's the track conditions and the temperature, because it's a chemical reaction, the rubber compound and the tarmac. So if you ride a soft slick on a cold track, it's going to tear to pieces in no time. So you need to have something harder, which might work in the morning and not tear, but might not give you the ultimate grip in the afternoon. So that's number one reason I wouldn't use racing slicks at a track day. Number two, you're kind of shackled by tyre warmers, tyre stands or paddock stands, having a power source generator, being able to plug it into a wall somewhere. They're a right pain in the arse. And then you get this kind of thing where they call your session out and you leave it to the last minute because you want your tyres piping hot, like you're about to do a Super Bowl lap, when it doesn't really matter. You can just build up. And of course, if the track's damp or whatever, then slicks just aren't going to work. What I would say though, also treaded tyres allow you to ride to the track if you want to. The new generation of track day slicks are very good. So you kind of got your cake and eat it. You've got, the big advantage of slicks obviously is you've got more rubber on the road than a tread where there's no gaps. So a track day slick will give you that kind of ultimate contact patch on the track. But they're a kinder compound. They're not so susceptible to heat cycles. So they'll last a lot longer. You don't actually need tyre warmers with them. So again, with Pirelli, their track day slick, you can just kind of use that like a road tyre almost. So getting back to your question, I wouldn't say that it's an ability thing, moving to slicks. I would just say it's kind of a being able to manage the tyres thing, moving to slicks. If slicks were easy to manage and you could ride from your house from, to the track on a set of slicks, then yeah, that'd be brilliant, wouldn't it? But slicks are just so specialised; they're hard to deal with. A good set of Supercorsa SPs. We used them on a superbike test earlier in the year in Sicily, and unless you're absolutely chasing the last few tenths, you don't need anything more. But great question. Thank you very much. And finally, from CPU UK, informative as ever, sir. Thank you very much. You've ridden many bikes over the decades, but which one would you say you dislike the most and wouldn't throw a leg over again unless a gun was put to your head by the editor? Great question. Thank you very much. I have ridden a lot of bikes. The ones... there's not many bad bikes. It's an old cliche. I've ridden some howlers. The bad ones are the ones that are kind of, what would you call them? Arty kind of one-off bikes full of exotic materials that basically don't work. The reason motorbikes work so well is because manufacturers spend millions of dollars and millions of man hours developing a bike, so it's nice to ride. When you got somebody with who just throws a set of Öhlins into a nice frame and engine and everything, it never works. So I've ridden some pretty bad one-offs. I've ridden some horrendous Nortons at the beginning when they come out, the sort of the Ghana Nortons, which have been awful. But the ones now I don't like riding, and this is going to be a controversial one. I hate the Yamaha Tracer for one simple reason. It's because of the wind noise. I think it's got a great engine. I think it's great value. I think it can be a lot of fun. The new generation Tracers have got better chassis geometry, so they're more stable. Everything about them is brilliant, except the wind noise. The screen is horrendously loud, as of all kind of tall rounders, but the Tracer is particularly bad, and no matter how good it is elsewhere, I just really get nervous about riding it. I have to ride them sometimes, but I've got to ride them particularly slowly. I did a launch of the Tracer a few years ago during COVID times where we rode from Birmingham to Wales, and I'm convinced it caused a drop in my hearing. I've said before, I can only hear out of one ear. I'm completely deaf in this one because of mumps when I was a kid, and this ear's gradually going down, and I wear earplugs and all the rest of it. You put them in properly, but even so, the Tracer screen is awful, really awful. So they're the bikes I don't really like riding, but I have to because that's the job, and there's so many bikes now with these tall rounders. You can't get around it. Like Multistradas are bad, the Triumph 660 Sport, everything really. And when you jump from one of those to a sportier bike, like a conventional sports tourer with a more rake screen, or even a super bike, they are just silent by comparison. It's incredible what the difference is. But there you go. I'll just keep riding them and take one for the team. But that's brilliant. Thank you very much for all your questions and comments. Keep sending them in, and I will see you soon. Thanks very much.